Ye elders of Israel, come join now with me, and seek out the righteous where'er they may be, in desert, on mountain, on land, or on sea, and bring them.
Welcome to the third hour of Power, brought to you by This Week in Mormons. My name's Grady of This Mormon Life, and we're teaming up with Jeff and Al to bring you this new podcast where we talk about the third hour of church, particularly the teachings of the presidents of the church. Currently, This Week in Mormons has Sunday School Bonanza, where they go over the weekly Sunday School lessons from gospel doctrine. And I thought it would be great for us to work together and be able to provide with you some insights to our lessons in the next hour of church when we split off for priesthood and relief society. In the podcast today, we're simply going to be introducing you to the Joseph Fielding Smith Manual and let you know what's in store for this year and a little bit about how the podcast works in the format in case you're new. Just by way of explanation, every year during Priesthood and Relief Society, we discuss the teachings of a current Latter-day Prophet or President of the Church. This year we'll be learning about Joseph Fielding Smith. This excited me for two reasons. First is that I really don't know much about Joseph Fielding Smith, but the other thing is that it means that we're 1 year closer to the Gordon B. Hinckley Manual. The only presidents that we haven't talked about yet that are past presidents are Ezra Taft Benson and Howard W. Hunter. And then Gordon B. Hinckley, which I am really looking forward to. He was the prophet of my youth, and I am looking forward to learning more about him. So, we're 1 year closer. I don't want to go into too much detail about the history of Joseph Fielding Smith. It's about 30 pages in the manual, but there's a lot of really good things in there, and I just wanted to touch on a few of the highlights. Firstly, he was born in 1876. He's the son of former president of the church, Joseph F. Smith, and that makes him the grandson of Hiram Smith, who's the brother of the prophet Joseph Smith. He grew up on a farm like a lot of the people did back then. He knew how to work, and he also loved baseball. One of the neat things I liked was that he would often leave baseball games early to sneak in the family hayloft and read the Book of Mormon. And although I love hearing stories about Tommy Monson setting fires in the wilderness, I also love learning about how a lot of our prophets were really sober as young men, and that they loved the Lord and had these little habits that they had to help them understand the gospel better. And I think that it really prepared them to be a prophet and a leader of the church later in their lives. After he was married, he was called on a mission to England in 1899. He had a really hard time while he was there. He actually didn't have a single convert or baptism, but he did credit his mission with allowing him to grow personally as a student and teacher of the gospel and as a priesthood leader. Joseph Fielding Smith had two of his wives pass away before he married his third wife, and he was called as an apostle in 1910 by his father Joseph F. Smith, who was the prophet at the time. It's kind of an interesting thing. There was a vacancy in the quorum of the 12, and they were all discussing together, and they had trouble for about an hour talking with finding uniformity or finding the same name together. And so Joseph F. Smith recessed the meeting and he went to go pray. As Joseph Smith prayed, he felt really hesitant to return to the meeting to reveal his answer because two of his sons were already serving as general authorities, and he wanted to make sure that this was the Lord's will and not just his own idea. When he finally did come back into the room and the apostles all gathered together and he presented his name, the support was unanimous immediately among all the other apostles that were there. And it's an interesting thing. Back then, you didn't get called into an office and told about the calling you're going to be getting. The callings were announced from the pulpit, which is very, very unique compared to how we do it now, where you talk with the bishop and then some of us give excuses why we can't do the calling. It was just announced in the general meeting, and it was up to you to figure out how to navigate that new calling. And during the next general conference, Joseph Fielding Smith was there in attendance, and one of the ushers said to Joseph Fielding Smith, who do you think is going to be the new apostle? And Joseph Fielding Smith says, I don't know, but it won't be you and it won't be me. Just before the name of the newest member of the Quorum of the 12 was read, it says, Joseph felt a prompting from the Spirit that the name might be his own. Still, he later said that when his name was announced, he was so startled and dumbfounded he could hardly speak. And what an interesting thing that is, that to be called as an apostle from the pulpit. That's an amazing thing, and a very interesting thing, especially when you're called by your own father. He was a general authority for 60 years, and he saw a lot of changes in the church, but also in the world, from going from riding to meetings in horse-drawn carriages to traveling to assignments in jet planes. He was sustained as president of the church in 1970, but he only served for 2 years, which was the shortest presidency until Howard W. Hunter, who served for only 9 months. He was known for being stern and giving a voice of warning, but also was gentle and willing to forgive others. He was away from home a lot on assignments, and while he was gone, he often wrote poetry back to his wife. It's interesting, too. One of the poems that he wrote provides the text to our hymn, Does the Journey Seem Long? I like that he did this. Some of my favorite hymns are hymns that were penned by apostles and presidents of the church. And I think that's such an interesting thought when we have scriptures like the Psalms that were also have been put to music. That music is an important part of worship. There's a lot more to read about, and I recommend that you do, but I wanted to share a quote by his son-in-law, who was Elder Bruce R. McConkie, who prophesied, for years to come his voice will speak from the dust as generations yet unborn learn the doctrines of the gospel from his writings. This year of teachings of the presidents of the church, we see that prophecy fulfilled, and we're excited to share that journey with you. So let me tell you a little bit more about myself. Like I said before, my name is Grady Kerr, and I write for the blog This Mormon Life. I discuss LDS culture, being a member of the church, and things that I do to be a better member of the church and also a better disciple of Jesus Christ. It can be hard sometimes being a Mormon in the world, and some of the things I talk about is how to navigate that appropriately. I've had a lot of callings in the church. My current calling is that of a ward missionary, but some of my other callings have been as a Sunday school teacher, Elders Quorum presidency member, a primary teacher. But one of the callings that impacted me the most was my time as the ward Sunday school president. Sunday school president has been known as a bit of a push calling, where you ring the bell, you pass out the roll. And I was kind of nervous about this. I thought, this is going to be easy. But as I read the handbook, I learned more about my calling and what it meant. I really understood what it meant to be a Sunday school president, and that part of the calling that the brethren intended for it to do, or I guess part of what the brethren intend the calling to be, is to be a supervisor over teaching. That's also in the other auxiliaries, not just in the Sunday school, but teaching in the home as well. And it's another case of where every calling is as easy or as rewarding as you want to make it. And so I took the manual and what the Lord intended this calling to be, and I tried my best to magnify that. One of the things that I quickly learned is that there is at times a problem with gospel instruction at church. We're all members of the church doing our best, and usually that leads you good results. But there are some members who either don't do their best or haven't been given the proper tools to be the best. And so that was part of my mandate that I undertook, was to help the teachers in our ward be better prepared, be ready and able to help those that were learners to be edified and be uplifted. As I've been in the church all my life, I've had wonderful teachers that have prepared. They put forth effort and prayer into their lessons. They provided additional insights. They shared meaningful spiritual experiences. And they were able to get a discussion going with the group. And I really felt edified as a result of that. Unfortunately, I've also had some teachers, particularly in the Elders Quorum, it seems, when the teacher wasn't prepared. I've seen the scene from the RM really played out before my eyes as the members of the Elders Quorum presidency seemed to be juggling of who was actually teaching that Sunday. I thought it was you. Oh. And the teacher who finally gets it volunteered seemed to take no care beforehand of what he should speak, as if he was trying to follow the advice from the scriptures in a way. And so he would say, "Does anyone have a manual?" And no one seemed to have one. And someone would go to the clerk's office and bring some manuals in, and we would take turns reading a paragraph at a time. And he would read it, and then he'd say, "So, what are your thoughts on that?" And no one would really answer. Maybe kind of crickets there. And then so he'd say, "Well, let's keep reading." And we'd read another paragraph, and it was rinse and repeat for about 30 minutes. And then he would say amen, and we would go on our way. And I really didn't get a lot out of the lesson, although I really did try sometimes. But with the third hour of power, this podcast we are making for you today, we really want to help you with that process and help you know how you can help save those lessons and be able to participate better. One of the main purposes for our podcast here, but also for Sunday School Bonanza, is to prepare you for the lesson each second and third Sunday. Whether you're there as a learner or whether you're there as an instructor, we're going to be talking about the highlights of each lesson for about 15 minutes a week. As we talk about the key points and offer additional insights, we hope to give you some ideas that you can go into class with and be an active participant in the discussion. If you have a great teacher, you can help to be part of that discussion and share some things that you learned from us, or even things that you just realized yourself as you prepared. But also, if you have a lesson that maybe is getting off track, or a teacher that's not prepared, you can help to rein those things in. You can know some of the key points of the lesson and maybe know some good questions to ask to help invigorate the lesson and get things going. I'm not ashamed to admit that I have taught a lesson from the second row, because no one in elders quorum ever sits in the first row, which is basically kind of the Mormon equivalent, I guess, to backseat driving. The second benefit of this podcast for everyone is that maybe you're not able to attend third hour. Maybe you have a calling in priesthood, you have a calling in the youth, or maybe you have a calling in primary, and so you're not able to be there. But you want to know what's happening in class as you all gather together around the family dinner table on Sunday and ask what you learned about. You want to be able to be part of that conversation with your wife, who is learning the lesson in Relief Society, and be able to talk with her more about it. Lastly, the intent we hope to provide, or I guess the benefit we're hoping to provide, is that maybe you're not able to make it at church on Sunday. I have a friend named Matt who's a great guy. He's a doctor, and at times he can't make it to church because he's saving lives or he's relieving a patient's impaction. But we're hoping that people like him can listen to the podcast, get some ideas and some inspiration as we hold a discussion for him. Maybe you're not active in church at this time. Our goal is to help you feel closer to the church and perhaps help you ease back into activity. And when you do, we hope that this podcast helps you, that you can get some ideas and some insights, that as you attend class, you can feel like you can participate. Maybe you have something to share now that you've been able to prepare because you've listened to us, got some ideas, or came up with some ideas of your own. But if there's any other benefits that you find as you listen to the podcast, or benefits that you want out of the third hour of power, out of Sunday School Bonanza, or out of the Gospel Study Sesh, we want to know. Send us an email at contact@thisweekinmormons, and let us know what you're getting out of the podcast or what you want to get out of the podcast, so that we make sure that we keep on doing or start doing the things that help you get the most out of your Sunday lessons. Because, basically what we're doing is the teachings of the presidents of the church. The podcast will only be twice a month. The first Sunday of the month is usually a presidency prerogative, and the fourth Sunday is teaching for our times from General Conference, and so we'll never be in sync on those two lessons. Maybe at some point we might think of something to do for those 2 weeks, but until then we'll just be doing lessons for second and third Sundays, covering the teachings of the presidents of the church. Because of ward conference, state conferences, things like that, our schedules might not always be in sync. Our goal is to just do 2 lessons a week, and if we keep on that track, we should always be right on track with you, or maybe a week ahead. And so there's always going to be a podcast ready for you, so that when you're ready to get ready for a lesson, you'll have an episode that will help you do that. Each episode is going to be about 15 minutes, just like they are on Sunday School Bonanza. And we're going to have a similar format, just as Jeff has a new co-host each week. I'm going to be joined by those who love to talk about the gospel. Each week we'll have a new host, or maybe just a rotating panel. But we hope that we can give you some further insights, not only on the priesthood side of things, but also on the Relief Society side of things. I have some plans to have my sister join us, who's also a blogger, who talks about being a mom and faith and things like that. And we hope to give you all kinds of perspectives to help you understand and be better ready to participate in the lessons. If this is something that you'd like to be a part of, if you think that you are a good person to be a co-host with us, let us know at contact@thisweekinmormons that you'd like to be a participant. Let us know what makes you a good person to participate, and let us know how you'd like to participate, and we'd be glad to talk about it and see what we can do to make it happen. And that just about does it for our first introductory podcast. In a few days here, we're going to have our first lesson podcast out to you, and that way you can kind of get out the gate, hit the ground running, and be prepared to have a great year participating in class. So once again, this is Grady from This Mormon Life. You can reach me at this-mormon-life.com. Also on Facebook at facebook.com/thismormonlife, and on Twitter at thismormonlife. This has been the third hour of Power, brought to you by This Week in Mormons, which can be reached at thisweekinmormons.com. Also, you can email us at contact@thisweekinmormons.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/thisweekinmormon, and also on Twitter at The Real Twim, and all kinds of other ways that you can contact them. We're really grateful for being able to partner with them on this new podcast, and we're proud to be a part of the Twim family now. So until next time, we wish you all a fond adieu.